Assalamu alaikum, I'm Aisha and you're watching Samaa News. Here are today's headlines. The United States has imposed new sanctions targeting Iran's ballistic missile and drone programs. The Treasury Department said 32 individuals and entities across several countries, including the UAE, China, Turkey and Germany, were blacklisted for helping Iran's procurement networks. Washington says these groups threaten US and allied forces in the Middle East and commercial shipping in the Red Sea. Russia says it is ready to resume peace talks with Ukraine in Istanbul. No in-person negotiations have taken place since July, when a brief 40-minute meeting was held in the Turkish city. Russian officials say the initiative now depends on Ukraine, which rejects Moscow's claims that it is responsible for the stalled process. Kenya says more than 200 of its citizens are fighting for Russia in the war in Ukraine. The Foreign Ministry said recruitment networks are still active in both Kenya and Russia, luring people with false promises of high pay and non-combat jobs. Nairobi says some of the recruits have been injured, while others were rescued in a recent security raid near the capital. Moscow has not commented on the claims. Ukraine's energy minister, Svitlana Hryntchuk, has resigned amid an anti-corruption probe in the country's energy sector. In a post on Facebook, she said she had submitted her resignation but denied any wrongdoing. The resignation comes as President Volodymyr Zelensky called for the dismissal of both justice and energy ministers. In a late-night video address, he said there must be full transparency in all energy operations. US President Donald Trump says he has an obligation to sue the BBC. In an interview, he accused the broadcaster of misrepresenting his comments ahead of the January 6th Capitol riots. Trump also discussed immigration policy and stressed the need for skilled foreign workers while addressing domestic employment concerns. Meanwhile, President Trump has sent a letter to Israeli President Isaac Herzog, urging him to pardon Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who is on trial for corruption. In the letter, Trump called the case a political, unjustified prosecution. Herzog's office says any pardon request must follow official legal procedures. The US House of Representatives is set to vote on a stopgap funding bill to end the longest government shutdown in American history. The measure, backed by President Trump, has already passed the Senate and would fund government operations through January 30th. The vote follows weeks of partisan gridlock, with Democrats opposing the deal over stalled health insurance subsidies. The US Supreme Court has extended a pause on a judge's order that required President Donald Trump's administration to fully fund food aid for 42 million low-income Americans this month, amid the federal government shutdown, even as lawmakers took steps toward ending the stalemate. The court's action allows the administration for now to continue withholding about $4 billion from the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, known as SNAP, or food stamps. At least 37 people have been killed after a passenger bus plunged into a ravine in Peru's southern Arequipa region. Officials say the bus collided with a van before veering off the Panamericana Sur highway in Ocona district. Most victims died at the scene, while others were rushed to nearby hospitals. Local authorities say more than 24 people are being treated for injuries, several of whom are in critical condition. Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan says authorities have recovered the flight recorder from the military cargo plane that crashed in Georgia, killing all 20 personnel on board. However, he said investigations are ongoing to determine the cause of the accident. The C-130, which took off from Azerbaijan, was part of Turkey's aging fleet. Search and rescue teams from both countries continue to work at the crash site. Dozens of indigenous protesters forced their way into the COP30 climate summit venue and clashed with security guards at the entrance to demand climate action and forest protection. Shouting angrily, protesters demanded access to the UN compound, where thousands of delegates from countries around the world are attending this year's UN climate summit in the Amazon city of Belém, Brazil. Some waved flags with slogans calling for land rights or carried signs saying, "Our land is not for sale." The International Energy Agency says that global oil and gas demand may grow until 2050, departing from its previous expectations of a speedy transition to cleaner fuels, and predicting that the world will likely fail to achieve climate goals. The energy security watchdog has been under pressure from the US for a shift in recent years toward a focus on clean energy policies, as President Donald Trump called on American companies to further expand oil and gas production. China's President Xi Jinping has told Spain's King Felipe that the world's second-largest economy seeks to work with Madrid to boost the global influence of both nations, as the heads of state met in Beijing ahead of a signing ceremony. China, for its part, is eager to move past trade tension with the 27-strong bloc over its heavily subsidized electric vehicles industry, as US President Donald Trump's tariffs weigh on exports. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has said in a joint press conference in Sydney with Indonesia's President Prabowo Subianto that Australia and Indonesia have agreed on a new security treaty that commits the neighbours to consult each other if either country is threatened. Albanese said the treaty was a major extension of previous security deals, the first signed 30 years ago, and also commits to regular security dialogue between leaders. He added that Indonesia and Australia recognised that acting together was the best way to secure peace and stability in the region. And France captain Kylian Mbappé says the team will honour the victims of the 2015 Paris attacks during Thursday's World Cup qualifier against Ukraine, marking the 10th anniversary of the tragedy. Coach Didier Deschamps emphasised a duty of remembrance and support. Only fullback Lucas Digne from the original 2015 squad will be on the field, as France aims to secure qualification for next year's World Cup. That's all for now. For more updates, visit www.samaa.tv. Thank you for watching Samaa News.